I'm trying to do some behind the scenes things. You all don't mind me get everything set up, and we're going to. Oops. Hope no more interruptions. I should have put my phone on do not disturb so it won't interrupt my uh, feed. All right, so we're going to go live on air, you all that are watching us on Facebook. So please stand by. Sorry for the silence and the awkwardness. But again, if you have any questions for Mr. Ricky, please drop them in our Facebook live feed. And, we definitely want to, we will highlight, for those who are still undecided on voting or who haven't voted yet, hopefully you can plead your case as to why they should vote for you. Okay, Facebook. What's going on here? Hey, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Okay, here we are. So I know everyone's watching on Facebook, like, what is she doing? I'm running the show by myself, so I'm trying to make sure everything is going well and watch the clock because we're getting ready to hit the top of the hour and we're going to get started here very soon. So can you hear me okay, Mr. Ricky?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ready. So we have our weather and news and also our legal ID. So everyone please stand by those watching on Facebook. And I just want to say good morning to Miss Linda Justin Frazier. Thank you for checking in. We're very excited to have Mr. Ricky on today. Um, we try to give every candidate the opportunity to come on and to share their platform and to state their case as to why people should vote for them. And so we're grateful that we finally got a chance to catch up with you, even though it's down to the wire. But that's okay. It's never too late. Election day is not until next Tuesday, and so I know there's still some people who haven't voted yet. All right, so here we go. Um, about 20 seconds.
All right.
Sorry for the awkward silence, you all. I'm just trying to make sure I get my timing. This is live radio. You can't be late. Right. Good morning, everyone. You're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. I'm your host, Quabila Jones, and my special guest today is Mr. Ricky Harrington Jr., who is the candidate for U.S. Senate for the state of Arkansas. Good morning, Mr. Ricky.
Good morning.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us. I'm happy that we finally got a chance to catch up with you to share your platform um, concerning the issues that Arkansans face and what you could possibly do to help them on the federal level. But before we get started, I have to give this disclaimer. KLEK 102.5 FM and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council does not support, endorse, or oppose any candidate. This interview is provided for informational purposes only. So with that being said, let's get started with an introduction. Please tell everyone who is Mr. Ricky, where you're from, and then why you decided to run for any office.
Well, I'm originally from Northeast Texas, the Arklatex region.
Okay.
Pretty much grew up in Jefferson, Texas most of my life. And I got involved in the ministry when I was about 19 years old and went to school in Lubbock, Texas, trained to become a missionary apprentice, spent a year in Scotland, volunteering at primary schools, volunteering to help out the elderly, and also working at a school for special needs children there in Scotland. After I was done with my term in Scotland, I got a full tuition scholarship to go to Harding University. That's what led me here to Arkansas.
Okay.
So I went there in Searcy, got myself a bachelor's of ministry, spent some time working at psychiatric hospital, learned a lot about our healthcare system, and doing that, learned a lot more than what I, been taught my whole life by family members and mother, grandmother, and aunt who have been healthcare professionals. And after that, I went to Baltimore, associate pastor, and to China afterwards as a full-time missionary for almost 2 years. And
You have
that
done
was,
some traveling.
yes, ma'am. I've been around the block a little bit.
Okay. And
Yes,
one thing I didn't mention, you are the Libertarian candidate on what some would consider third party. Well, not what some, what is considered third party candidate.
yes.
So we just want to let people know that. Um, Not that that should sway you. Again, I'm not telling you all who to vote for, but I do want you to be mindful that that shouldn't sway your decision on who you vote for. And that's all I can say on that. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I do want to.
that's an important conversation to have for us as a nation is to give the candidates a look and not just vote down party line because that creates the problem that we have right now in our country with this hyperpartisanship. And back in August, they were working on something in Washington D.C. They were working on the HEALS Act and the HEROES Act, and the Democrats and Republicans couldn't work together to come up with a way to solve this problem for the American people. And unless we get other voices involved in this process, we're going to continue to see this pattern that we're seeing right now in our country, with the two parties digging in their heels to where your average American is using the term, Republicans and coming up with these elaborate pejorative names for
Okay.
other people who hold certain political beliefs. First off, you got to dehumanize someone to be able to carry out violent acts against them. And whenever we see people dehumanizing other Americans because of whatever political belief that they have, we know that we are heading down a wrong path.
Yes, I recently watched a video on YouTube that was not YouTube, on Instagram, that was disturbing. And no matter what I believe, as you said, I would never dehumanize anyone and attack them physically because of their personal beliefs. I know how to close my mouth and move around and operate in a different manner, but that's neither here nor there in the moment. I want to go ahead and get into one, why did you decide to run for any office? And two, why this particular office for the US Senate?
Okay. Well, after I came back from China, there's a process that people go through called reverse culture shock.
Okay.
Whenever you move to a new culture, you have to get acclimated to their culture, and then you kind of start internalizing things just to be able to function there and also engage with the host culture. So whenever you come back, you have to re-engage your own culture. And so that's what, the subject that I had just mentioned in passing there about how, we are getting a little too violent with one another. And so violent in the way we speak and in our actions as well. And whenever I came back, I noticed that there were some patterns of authoritarianism in our country. And so I've always had some libertarian leanings, especially when it comes to the scope, size, and role of government, and
Okay.
especially the power that government has over people's lives. It should be minimal. It shouldn't be constantly expanding like it is right now.
Okay.
And I got involved with the Libertarian Party, and the Arkansas state legislature started passing some laws that were clear. Anybody that has some common sense knows that they are trying to use their power to protect themselves, protect their own
Okay.
power. And so I testified in the state capitol against some of the laws that they were passing. And especially some of the things that Senator Cotton has said and done has led me to run, specifically
for this?
I wanted to challenge him. And, the Senate has a role that is unique. The House has a role that is unique, but I have a particular stance against a further expanding executive branch of government.
Okay.
And the Senate has particular powers that are to check the executive branch. So that's why I chose the Senate, because we can't have a continually expanding executive power. We have to check it.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get into the items that are on your list or your agenda. I don't want to say agenda. That sounds bad. That your platform, the items that you would like to tackle if you are elected for this position. What is one of? Let's start with maybe the top three. Even though everything is important when it comes to the state of Arkansas, but let's start with the top three items that you would love to address if you are elected.
Definitely top three: criminal justice reform, healthcare, and foreign policy. Criminal
Okay.
justice, because America is apparently the leader of the free world, but we hold a quarter of the world's incarcerated population. And there is an extensive history of criminalizing behavior that should not be criminalized, especially when there is no victim. And I
Okay.
would like to work on ending this war on drugs that has put people of color in prison at a far higher rate than others. And also with police reform, we want to make sure that our police officers are safe. We also want to make sure that those that have authority do not abuse their authority against the citizens of the United States of America. They have constitutional rights. They should see their day in court. They should not be killed on the streets,
You know,
especially innocent people.
I've heard the argument from law enforcement and other individuals that say, well, law enforcement officers have to make split decisions on the fly, and they have to take into account they don't know what's actually going to happen. I know that right now the is it Philadelphia, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Um, they're facing some unrest right now because the individual was shot and killed by police. There are still details coming out about that case, so I'm not going to just get too deep into that. However, from what I have read and seen, the gentleman didn't have a gun. He did have a weapon, but he didn't have a gun. So there's arguments for that should have been handled differently. One article said that the police officers did not have tasers, they only had guns. So, in situations like that where there's equipment missing, lacking, not provided, whatever the case, what are some ways you would like to address that?
Well, we definitely need some de-escalation tactics to be, what's the word I'm looking for, used by our police officers and law enforcement officers.
Okay.
Um, I worked at the Cummins prison. Most of the correctional officers just have some mace, and
Oh,
inside those prisons are some of the dangerous people, dangerous men in this state, extremely dangerous men. And what correctional professionals have to use is their wits and the de-escalation tactics. And I understand free world policing is a little different from corrections, but it's extremely volatile in those correctional facilities. And one bad move can set off a really serious riot. So a
yes.
lot of correctional officers have to use the wits, have to come up with other solutions to the problem rather than using the hammer. And this is the problem. Our free world police officers do not have to use the hammer all the time.
Okay.
There should be other tools in their arsenal, especially whenever you come up and you speak to people in those contentious situations. You don't have to use violence to gain control. And I want everyone to understand that I'm not anti-police, and I understand about those split-second decisions, and I understand that there are people that pull guns on police officers. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people that are unarmed, even with a knife.
Okay.
There's other ways to de-escalate the situation without pulling out the gun.
Okay. All right. So that's one item, which is police reform. And what about with that, maybe some psychological evaluations on a more consistent basis versus when tragedy happened, only when tragedy happened.
Yes, the training for the police officers is not as extensive as some other countries. You can become a police officer with training, with fewer training than someone to become a barber. The college hours necessary and the training hours necessary. And I understand that there's always continuing education, things like that. We went through the same thing working for the Arkansas Department of Corrections, but there needs to be a lot more training in knowing the law, and especially we don't want the police officers harming the citizens and violating their constitutional rights. And one thing that I'm a big proponent of is tweaking the Freedom of Information Act, where that body cam footage is released faster
Okay.
rather than several months later. We're finding out about I'm thinking about Elijah McClain. That was a year after it happened, several months after it happened, that we found out what happened to him. And
Mhm.
whenever that information is withheld, it leaves an avenue for some things to be missed.
Okay.
People's recollections are not as sharp whenever time passes, and we just want it to be fair. That's essentially.
Okay. So let's move on. We have about 6 minutes left in this segment, and we also have a question which relates to another item on your list, which is healthcare. And Miss Brittany Lewis says, "What is your view on the Affordable Care Act? That has been the talk of the century." I know that's the exaggeration, but it's been the talk of the year for sure.
Well, the problem in our country is the cost of healthcare. It's the rising costs, and most of us don't know what we're paying for until after we receive the service. And we want to bring out those prices, make them a little bit more transparent, so hospitals can compete with one another. We really need the competition, and this is what I think about the Affordable Care Act. Um, Back whenever it was in the process of being passed, there were a lot of people that supported it. There were a lot of people that didn't support it and complained about it. People that didn't complain about it, the insurance companies, because they knew that they were going to get a big payday.
Okay.
And so the problem is our whole system needs to be reformed. It needs to be a healthcare revolution, and we have to start from the ground up. Now, the Affordable Care Act has helped a lot of people. And
Hmm.
there's a big call now for Medicare for all, but we have to separate ourselves from it's either going to be all of this or not, or all of this or not. What we need to do is come up with a solution that people who do like it and people who don't like it have a means to access health care. So I'm in favor of taking a look at the Affordable Care Act and see how we can repurpose it to be maybe a mini program for a single payer system.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. And then another item on your list you mentioned, I apologize, I didn't write that down. What was the other top three item
Foreign
aside
policy.
foreign policy? And I have been watching. I simply can't sit through a whole hour of a news story because there's a lot. It's too much back and forth, and so I watch various clips on YouTube from the major networks, and so I've seen a lot of talk, heard a lot of talk rather, about foreign policy and building these relationships with China has been on the top of the list, but other countries. So let's talk a little bit more. We have about 3.5 minutes in this segment, and then we can definitely pick it up on the other side of the break. But let's go ahead and get into what do you mean? what would you like to do if you are elected concerning foreign policy?
Well, definitely being in the Senate and in Congress, Constitution says Congress has the war powers. The
Okay.
United States should not go to war unless Congress has declared war. And we understand that the executive is the commander in chief. And so he is in charge of all our military forces. And we understand that the executive can move unilaterally in the defense of the nation. But if we are fighting across the Atlantic Ocean or across the Pacific Ocean, in the Middle East, in other foreign countries, are we really engaging in the defense of the United States? Or
Okay.
are we going involving in nation building at the cost of trillions of dollars and thousands or tens of thousands of young Americans' lives? And so we've almost been in Afghanistan and Iraq almost 20 years now, $2 trillion down the tube with no end game in sight. And here we are with on our third president in Afghanistan, and they've all promised to bring back the troops, and it has not happened. We
I
have to
remember
reevaluate.
I remember hearing and reading information very early in the year, and well, I'll say very early, right around when the COVID pandemic first started, that troops were coming home in mass numbers. And so far, I am not aware that that has happened, or am I missing something?
I think it's basically all talk and just signaling. And this is the problem that we have in our politics. It's like, okay, if a politician just says something, it's enough. No, it's never enough. You need to follow through with your actions. It's the time to end all talk and all of these pie in the sky promises needs to end. And we need to have some action. And if a politician does not follow through on their actions, it's time to get rid of them.
Okay. All right. We're going to get ready for a break here shortly. So, for those of you listening on air, if you want to jump on Facebook, you can hear a little bit of our conversation. We won't get too deep into another topic because we don't want you to miss out. We probably will just expand on what's already been discussed and then discuss what's coming up. So, again, you are tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 of it. Sorry. I'm so sorry, y'all. Tis the season. Okay. Um, we are speaking. I am speaking with Mr. Ricky Harrington Jr., who is running for U.S. Senate, of course, for the state of Arkansas. For those of you who haven't voted, you have time to get to know Mr. Ricky and make your decision when you head to the polls. We cannot tell you who to vote for, but we do encourage you to vote. So again, election day is November 3rd, which is next Tuesday, less than a week away. But early voting has already started. Contact the county clerk's office in your city to know where the polling sites and times are. So those of you listening on air, please stay tuned. We'll be right back after these announcements. Okay, so we're still on Facebook. I apologize. I apologize. Sorry, you all. Um, So when we come back, we will definitely pick up talking a little more about foreign policy. Another issue that's very important to me, even though my child is no longer in school, many parents right now are facing frustrations, for lack of a better word, with the education system. And I do understand where we are in the midst of this pandemic.
Mm.
I just feel that, and again, I'm on the outside looking in. So please nobody come chop my head off. But I feel that over the summer months, maybe a little more could have possibly been done to set students and teachers up for success when the school year started again in August. But again, I understand policy, procedures, red tape, the whole 9 yards. Things don't move that fast all the time. But I would definitely love to address that when we come back.
All right. I surely was
And
about to address it right now.
Well, I don't want the on-air listeners that are listening on the radio, wherever they are, to miss out. I also want to talk about, I listened to your, as I said, I listened to your PBS interview, and they asked you questions about, what would you do differently, or how would you challenge? That's not the right word. How would you work with the other parties? How would you get them to work with you? Because to my knowledge, there are no other libertarian candidates in the House or the Senate. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There's only one libertarian in the House. His name is Justin Amash.
Okay.
And actually, he was a Republican and he left the Republican Party to become an independent. And he was independent for a while. Then he joined the Libertarian Party.
Okay.
He's
And
from Michigan.
have you had the opportunity to maybe reach out to him?
Yes, he gave my campaign an endorsement.
Okay.
Um, there was he said it out on Twitter. My little closing statements in the PBS. There was
Hmm.
a clip of it someone had posted. It had almost 200,000 views on my closing statement there. And
Okay.
Mr. Amash said, "We just need more people like Ricky in the Senate."
Okay. Well, all right. So, do you feel that being a libertarian, again, I have interviewed some individuals over the years of since I've been with the radio station. I've interviewed two people in particular that I remember, Mr. Frank Gilbert and Mark West, that ran for various offices. Um, why do you feel, I don't want to say it's harder, but running as a libertarian or the Libertarian Party, period, why do you feel it's harder for people to either, I hate to say accept, I'm trying to find the right words here.
I feel the question that you're asking.
And
It's
we have
it's like
40 seconds.
it's like trying to step out of your comfort zone. This is what you know. We know Republicans and Democrats. We don't know libertarians. And though somebody might have said something we agreed with, it takes a lot for a person to leave what they know and step out into the unknown. And that's the problem that libertarians face. And it was the same thing that I faced because I was a Democrat and I might have agreed with the libertarians, but this is all I know right here.
Okay. All right. Stand by. We're getting ready to go back on air. So those of you watching on Facebook, please stand by. And we're back on Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. I'm your host, Kubila Jones, and my special guest is Mr. Ricky Harrington Jr., running for U.S. Senate against Tom Cotton. All right, so for those of you who haven't voted, this is your opportunity to get to know Mr. Ricky and make your decision when you head to the polls. We here at KLEK cannot tell you who to vote for. We do not support or endorse or post any candidate. We just provide this interview for informational purposes only. So let's get back into our conversation. We ended talking about foreign policy. Is there anything else you would like to add to? I know that last bit of time was fairly short. So is there any more you would like to add to that before we go on to the next topic?
Our diplomatic corps, many movers and shakers and people that are foreign policy gurus consider our diplomatic corps to be America's second army. And I'd like to say that it should be our first army because they do a lot of work in trying to keep very collegiate relationships with other sovereign nations. And we should invest in the diplomatic corps a lot more than we do. A lot of money is sent toward the Department of Defense. We need to support our troops, our sailors, our soldiers, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardmen. We want to support people, but sometimes we don't need all the newest toys or what have you. I
Okay.
understand that America wants to have its supremacy, but sometimes there's ways to win without spending all the money that we spend on defense.
Okay. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to another topic so that we won't run out of time. I wanted to talk about education, and I brought this up during our, break for those of you who are listening on air. Um, I don't have a child in school right now, but I feel and empathize with the frustration that many parents and teachers are facing right now. And I understand we are in a unique time for us, and a lot of adjustments had to be made. So, on from the U.S. Senate position, what could you possibly do to help parents in Arkansas and parents, teachers, children in Arkansas with the education system, reduce their frustrations, improve on the curriculum? I don't know.
Well, it starts with our governor, and hopefully, as a senator, I can work with our governor with the remaining time that he has in office.
Okay.
During the summertime, there could have been a little bit more work done to make sure that our teachers and students would be safe. It's a new environment. We know that children get sick easily. With the simple cold, I go to work and I go into the went into the prisons all the time and come back home and not be sick. And there's 2,000 men, cramped into that little small area there at Cummins. But my children go to school and they catch a little something and bring it home, and that's how I get sick. And so if it's so easy to bring those little common colds home, what about some novel virus that is highly contagious? You know,
Mm-hmm.
that is, I think that little simple thing right there is something that was not taken into account whenever the plans were being made. Um, I really think that I know our teachers are having a hard time as well as parents and families, and I know that there are people out there that have to go to work and they depend on the public school system to send their children to there during the daytime while they're working, because if they didn't, they probably couldn't afford childcare and things like that. So it's a bad situation for us all. But the key is to have clear information come from our leaders so that people can make the right decisions for their families, for their businesses, and for their communities. And we need to empower those local communities because, what's going on in Fayetteville is not the same thing that's going on in Dumas or
Okay.
Dermont or Magnolia or Jonesboro. There's always something different going on at the local level. And what we need to do right now at the federal level is to come up with a plan that empowers state and local communities that is going to be free from the political whims at the federal level. As
Okay.
we've seen, the president called it a Democratic hoax. And there are people that believed the president, they trusted him. And they went out thinking it's a Democratic hoax and they caught COVID-19 and they passed away. Some good people, some good Christian people that really believed him. And I stand by this statement here that the president is going to have to pay for that either in this life or the next or both. You can't be a leader and then say those type of things and people die. They trusted you.
Okay. We have some comments and from our Facebook Live feed. I want to say good morning to Mr. Derek Coleman, and he says good morning, Ricky.
Morning,
Miss
Mr.
Shannon
Coleman.
Smithy, who says I was so excited to vote for you. Actually, the only person or any item I was for. I really enjoy how you put things, and I would be so proud to have you represent Arkansas. Thank you, Shannon. And I want to say good morning to my sister, Miss Gwen Henderson, checking in from Arizona. So you're getting love from all over.
That's
So,
deeply humbling.
so thank you all for checking in. Please share this message. Unfortunately, she lives in Arizona. She can't vote, but hopefully she can share the message with someone else she knows. But want to get back into the education system a little bit. You know, early on, and this is not to pick on who the current Secretary of Education is. She just want to be the person in that position. But there was talk of reallocating funds, redirecting funds, that was not favorable for those in the public school system. Um, from the U.S. Senate position, how closely would you work with that individual, whoever's in the office, and what changes could possibly be made?
I'm gonna tell you right now what my rubric is going to be for confirming or voting for anybody to represent any cabinet, whether it be the incumbent's cabinet or whether it be the Biden-Harris cabinet. Whether the person is competent, whether they have the knowledge to run the department that they have, and I don't think Secretary DeVos has any of those.
Okay.
And if I was in that situation, I would not have confirmed her. And our education system, there's always room for improvement. I say this frequently, and it comes from the way that I apply things to my life because my background is being a minister and a pastor, and of course I'm trying to help people be their best selves, but it
Yeah.
starts off with me. There's always room for improvement, and I take a look at our education system, and there's room for improvement. And sometimes money may answer all things, but the most valuable resource that we have is people.
Okay.
And what I would like to see is I always talk about occupational licensing reform. And we want to make sure that teachers are competent. But if the problem is we don't have enough teachers or we don't have enough certain professionals in this field, maybe we need to take a look at the roadblocks that are
Okay.
in the way from keeping people enter that profession, keeping people from teaching children, or what children really need is they need someone to be the mentor. They need someone to know. Children need to know that someone cares about them. Children
Okay.
need people that are going to be good and wholesome around them and lift them up and teach them things. Everyone doesn't learn the same way, and
Yes.
so we need to find ways. We need to identify how the children learn and set them on the path that's beneficial for them, not this one size fit all. And I'm for open education, open source education. I don't know
Okay.
if you're familiar with something named Sailor Academy. Um, it's something I worked with trying to implement it in the prisons. So inmates could take college courses and they could bank up to 33 credits at the local community college. So they at least have a head start. And so, people say the problem is what's keeping people from entering the middle class? Well, we say education. Okay, what about education is keeping people from entering the middle class? Well, some people might say the price tag of education. Well, how can
Hmm.
we deal with the price tag of education and how can we bring that down? Well, some people say that, yes, I have an education, but it's not helping me get a job then. Well, what's the solution to that problem? So this is the type of ways we should be addressing this. We should come together. We should identify the real problems and come up with real solutions to overcome the obstacles that's in the way.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, I want to get into another topic that was discussed during your interview. They asked you about how you would make an attempt, rather, to work with both parties, being that you would be in a minority if you are elected. And so you gave some, great answers, but I'd like for you to restate, how you would make an attempt to work with both the Republican and the Democratic Party if you are elected when it comes to a variety of issues.
Yes, some people have said that the Libertarian Party is a big tent party, and that is what drew me to the Libertarian Party
Okay.
because I don't fit the mold of being a Republican. I don't fit the mold of being a Democrat.
Okay.
I'm a square shaped piece, and there's a like the little children's toy. There's a circle there, but I'm a square, and I don't fit in the circle.
Okay.
And so, in my whole life, I've spent time going to foreign countries and trying to understand the way people think and understand why they think the way that they think. And I've always been in the middle of opposing sides, and I've always found a way to get those sides to work together. So there's some things that libertarians agree with Democrats and disagree with Democrats, and there's some things that they agree with Republicans and disagree with Republicans. And hopefully, me being in that position there on some of the issues that are necessary. Now, the Senate is kind of up for grabs right now. We don't know what's going to happen with the Senate race. And if there happens to be, a 50-49 split there and one libertarian, that would be very advantageous for Arkansas whenever it comes to voting.
Okay. So again, I want everyone to take the opportunity to get to know Ricky, not just look at the party he represents. I'm not trying to support or endorse or sway you in any way. I just feel that we as voters across the globe need to become more informed and engaged with the different candidates who are running for any position and not just vote party. I have grown up in rural Arkansas the majority of my life and then lived in Arkansas still to this part of my adult life. And it's almost like we've been conditioned, as you mentioned earlier, we've been conditioned to vote this way, think this way. And that doesn't have to always be the case. you know, Traditionally, blacks, as far back as I can remember, were were considered Democrats or voted Democrat. And that doesn't have to always be the case. You can vote for any person that aligns with your ideals. And we should be voting in that way versus party only. Do you have any comment to say, anything to say to that?
Well, there's one quote from one of the great Greek philosophers that I live by, which is that the unexamined life is not worth living, and we should always seek to understand why we do the things that we do. Why do we believe the things that we believe? And especially when it comes to voting, and far beyond just voting, there's a lot of things that go on between elections, and it seems that we only care about politics whenever it's time for elections. But
Mm,
the people need to be mobilized regardless of if it's election season or not. And especially if the people that we elected do not do what they told us they were going to do, people should have a problem with that. Nobody should ever take that sitting down.
okay. We have another comment from our Facebook page, and this goes back to the topic of education. Ms. Brittany Lewis says it is difficult for early childhood programs to find early childhood teachers at times due to pay, lack of tax incentives, like those for the K through 12 teachers, education requirements, etc. Some universities don't even have programs to help supply their communities with enough qualified early childhood teachers. So, how would you like to comment on that?
Yes, and it kind of goes back to my philosophy of open source education. So
Okay.
if people can't afford to go to college, then maybe there needs to be a nonprofit organization that comes up with a curriculum for learning how to work with young children in early childhood. And then that same group um, can talk to their legislature about passing certain laws that if people take this course, if people pass this certain test, they should be able to enter that job market.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always solutions to the problem, but as a libertarian, we want to come up with some solutions that don't require the heavy hand of the government.
Okay.
Um, you know, Coming up with something like that and removing the red tape for people to enter into that profession is a part of the libertarian philosophy of having small government and removing some of the red tape. We need to have standards, yes. We need to have certain protocols to make sure people are competent, but it should not be uh, such a standard that it does more harm than it does good. Because
Okay.
if we have a need and we are not able to fulfill that need because of whatever law you have put in place, you are protecting someone else. You're not trying to help the children.
I can remember, and I don't know if there's still these practices in place, or these incentives, rather, I should say. If you become a teacher, and I can only speak for Arkansas, if you become a teacher and you put in X number of years, you can get assistance with, say, your student loans and things of that nature. If you become a social worker and you work for a certain agency, that agency basically has a policy in place that they will help you, cover a portion of your student loan. It's basically you work for us and we will help you out,
Yes.
on one end. So I would like to see that also, as Ms. Brittany mentioned, for early childhood education, because without early childhood education, well, we won't have students to fill up K through 12 or even the universities.
Mhm. Yes, the current policy right now is that if you work for a state, local, federal, or tribal organization or nonprofit, and you make 120 on-time payments, the rest of your loan balance can be forgiven. That's the policy now, and you have to go and apply for that through Nelnet. I'm not sure. That's the main person that I deal with
Okay.
when it comes to student loans is through the Department of Education and Nelnet.
Okay.
And so, you know, from what I know, try to do some public service and work on getting some of those things cut down. There's something that I've been thinking about, in dealing with our infrastructure. I'm sure people are familiar with AmeriCorps. It's, the
Hmm.
domestic version of the Peace Corps. And so there's a lot of infrastructure that we need as a country. And I think maybe if we can pass some legislation to where if people work for, AmeriCorps and we start using AmeriCorps to build up our infrastructure, that'd be an avenue for people to get some of their student loans taken care of. The armed services does it for our service members,
Okay.
offer up to $40,000 in student loan repayments.
Wow.
Um, maybe we can take a look at a domestic um, arm that is purposely trying to go out and build up our communities and engage in community service, and that'd be an avenue to pay off student loans.
Okay. We're going to get ready for our next break. Our last segment is going to be a wrap up session, and you will have the opportunity to again state your case as to why voters should vote for you. And so, everyone out there listening on the radio or wherever you are, please stay tuned. We're getting ready for a quick break, but we will be back with Mr. Ricky Harrington Sr., candidate for U.S. Senate. So please stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. If you are still on the fence about who to vote for, it is my hopes that something was said here that may help you make your decision. But again, stay tuned. We'll be right back after these announcements. Okay, so we're off air, we're still live. I want to go back to that AmeriCorps piece because I am very familiar with it. Our city government has utilized quite a few volunteers through AmeriCorps. Now, granted, the biggest frustration of that is the pay, which I understand the component of that is to help the individuals understand the plight of the people that they will be serving. They make basically minimum wage, and they are afforded some other amenities within that. But however, that's like the one component. So I wonder if that also could be looked at. Um, I understand the purpose of the job is not to get, the opportunity is not to make a huge salary. It's basically to prepare you and get you in the mindset of service. Um, so, but is it possible to make just a little bit more than minimum wage?
We'll just have to take a look at it and see, some of the budgeting, and especially if some of the people that are joining AmeriCorps, if we come up with a new program that they can make, a little bit more than minimum wage, especially if they're working in construction jobs. because there's certain things that are, certain dangers that involve working with construction.
Okay.
You know, the United States is as prosperous as a nation as we are. We don't have a public transportation system like some other countries. I used to, while in China, get on the bullet train and go from Guangzhou to Beijing. That's a long distance
Hmm.
on a bullet train, going 303 kilometers an hour, or, to put it in other terms, a little over 120, 150 miles an hour. We
Okay.
don't we don't have a very good train system here in the United States. Uh,
No.
Amtrak. I don't want to really make a flippant joke about this, but we always hear something about Amtrak crashing once a year, and that's a tragedy. And we should be able to work on that system, and work on Amtrak being more efficient. And I understand that America was built for the automobile, but we are lagging behind on public transportation. There should at least be one bullet train going from Los Angeles. Or
From LA to New York.
yes, or
Okay.
anywhere.
Okay.
We should have a system like that here in this country.
Okay. All right. We got about 20 seconds before we go back. One issue, I know we don't have time to talk about it now. Um, Americans for Disabilities Act. Is that the is that how it goes? ADA, disability services, because that's something that affects me. We're getting ready to go back on air, so host. Welcome back to Community Conversations on KLK 102.5 FM with my special guest, Mr. Ricky Harrington Jr., who is a candidate for U.S. Senate. So we have had a very nice discussion, not too lively. The Facebook comments have been very nice and kind. We do have another comment from Ms. Brittany. She says Head Start is a federally funded program that helps millions of the most vulnerable children have access to a quality early childhood education and services. Would you be in support of maintaining funding for this program? We have heard some
Yeah,
discussion about defunding or reducing funding.
I'm definitely for keeping the funding for our Head Start.
Right? Like again, we need those. We need our children to become acclimated with those developmental pieces um, at as early as possible. And we need those qualified, as you mentioned, we need those qualified, certified, and also dedicated teachers in those positions to teach our babies and get them prepared for the next levels.
Hmm. Um, During the break, of course, we talked about Americans with Disabilities Act,
Hmm.
and my two old children, my daughter and my son, they are on the autism spectrum,
Okay.
and the waiting list is several thousand long. And the problem is we don't have enough people to enter that profession. And as I said again, uh, I'm for open source education, where someone who has a heart for working with children, but they don't have the means to, first off, get a bachelor's degree, second off, get a master's degree, but they have the drive, they have the heart to do it. And so we need to come up with avenues and pathways for them to be able to enter that profession without having to get tens of thousands of dollars in debt to to do that. And so this is a need that could be filled, and those are jobs that are being provided right there. That'd be 2,000, 3,000 jobs um, that we could have right there if we just have a slimmed down system for people to be specialized in that. Just go straight to learning
Hmm.
what it means to be an applied behavioral analyst, or a speech pathologist, or any other services that are needed by people who have disabilities. And I worked at Jenkins Memorial Center for a time, working with the adults there in Pine Bluff, and we need those services for the least of us, to so to speak. But I wouldn't really call them the least of us because that was the most joyous time I've had engaging with our compatriots who have different struggles than we have.
Okay. Miss Brittany says awesome, and Shannon Smithy says yes. So they are in agreement and with the comments you made in regards to trying to get more individuals into those early childhood programs, what teacher programs. And so, in our last few moments, I want to give you opportunity to state your case, why people should vote for you, and any final words you would like to, give.
Well, it's a simple case that I'm making to the people of Arkansas. Your current senator does not come and talk to you. I've been spending this past year of my life trying to get out and talk to the people of Arkansas. And in this past year, I've had more public events than our current senator has had in the 6 years that he has been in that seat. And so I'm dedicating my life, I've dedicated my adult life to helping people. And so this is what I want to do as a senator for the state of Arkansas, representing them in Washington, D.C., is to work with them. You won't have to worry about me not responding to you or putting a cease and desist letter on you. I'll work for all the people of Arkansas, regardless of political affiliation, because this is what matters. It matters. The voice of the people matter.
Okay.
Their needs matter. Their lives matter. And so I will dedicate my life in the United States Senate to helping the people of Arkansas.
All right. So in our last 2 minutes, please tell people how they can reach you. I know Election Day is next Tuesday, but if people still want to reach out to you, how can they reach you?
Well, I have a Facebook page, facebook.com/RDH number four Senate.
Okay.
Twitter, twitter.com/Ricky FOR Senate. My email is RDH4Senate, number four Senate at yahoo.com. You can reach me. I'll respond to the email. And of course, my website is rickyharringtonsenate.com.
Okay.
And I'm doing everything I can right now to let the people know who Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. is on their ballot and that I'm the better choice.
All right. Ms. Brittany says, thank you for actually taking time to speak to us and letting us get to know you and your views. So, definitely want to say thank you. Again, we try to give access to every candidate. Um, and so, we do thank you for giving us your time and sharing with the community of Jonesboro, Arkansas, and surrounding areas. Um, who you are, your views, and where you stand on things. And so, Mr. Derek Coleman says, thank you also, Ricky, for joining us on today. And so, again, Kelly K, we cannot tell you who to vote for, but we do encourage you to vote. Your vote matters. No matter what anyone says, I'm not going to go deep in that. Your vote matters. Votes local and state and federal. Don't leave any box unchecked on your ballot. Yes, the waits may be a little long. Make a plan, take a snack, take a chair, wear comfortable shoes, whatever it takes, make sure you get your opportunity to vote. Thank you, Mr. Ricky, so very much. And as we tell all candidates, good luck to you in your campaign.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I appreciate you for having me on the show this morning.
All right, we want to thank everyone out there listening and watching and supporting KLEK. We cannot do what we do without you. Miss Shannon Smithy says, thank you. So glad I caught this. Thank you, Miss Shannon, for checking in. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of Community Conversations. I hope everyone has a great and blessed day. All right, so we're off air. Let me um, get us off of Facebook here. uh, so stop the live stream. There we go. Okay, so and I need to stop recording.